In today's video, we continue on our NHL offseason plan series. Today, we jump back to the number 5 ranked team in the NHL, also became the 2024 Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers. They achieved something that they've never done before in franchise history. Now they face a shortened yet very crucial and busy NHL offseason. Lots of decisions to make. Can they repeat? How do they handle things? What are their expectations? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're starting to get closer to the end of the series. Of course, with the Stanley Cup Final being finished now, we went back and did the Edmonton Oilers, who I had skipped over because they were the 9th ranked team. Now we're at the Panthers, who are the 5th ranked team. And then from there, we still have the Hurricanes, Stars, and Rangers left as the top 3 from the regular season to complete. So stay tuned for those videos between the next 48 hours. They'll all be posted before we get to the draft on Friday night, sometime between now and then. So in case you're new to this series, we're going to recap the 23-24 season, take a look at some key team and individual stats, look at any changes they made, cap space, expiring contracts, and what are their top questions and priorities this offseason. So let's first take a look at the 5th ranked Stanley Cup champions here. Of course, the 5th ranked team from the regular season ended up becoming the champs. 52-24-6 was their record in the regular season. 110 points, finished again in the top 3 of the Atlantic Division. Took on state rival Tampa Bay in round 1. Beat them. Then they went on to play the Bruins in round 2, and then they took them out. And then, of course, they went on to play the Rangers and beat them. And then, of course, the Edmonton Oilers, the Western Conference champion, in the final round to become the 24 Stanley Cup champions, first time in franchise history. They scored 265 goals in the regular season, which was your 11th best, but they were the top team in the NHL with goals against only allowing 198. So that's obviously a huge part of winning and creating that winning formula. And Paul Maurice has been able to help with that since he's been there the last couple of years. The power play was very respectable at 23.5, 8th best in the league. The penalty kill was also very respectable at 82.5, for 6th best in the league. So overall, the regular season was very good. We know going into the playoffs that they stood a very good chance to win the Eastern Conference. We're going to be one of the heavyweights to contend for sure. Looking at their top individual performances, they were led by Sam Reinhart, 57 goals, 94 points. Certainly the best season he's ever had. Matthew Tkachuk, number 2 with 88 points. A little bit of a down from his past season. Still very good, but he did have a few more points last year. Barkov, again, was an 80-point player, arguably the best two-way player in the NHL at this point in his career. Carter Verhaeghe was 4th in scoring with 72 points. He's certainly on a bargain contract for a bit longer, but not too long. And then the acquired Tarasenko came over. He ended up being 5th highest in points with 55. Of course, many of those came with the Ottawa Senators before the trade, but he ended up being the 5th-ranked player in that respect. Sergei Bobrovsky had another real solid campaign, and of course was really, really good in the playoffs. Had a few games near the end with the Oilers that they got blown out, but at the end of the day, he was good enough and good more often than not to get them to Lord Stanley's Cup. His regular season stats were 36, 17, and 4 with a 2.37 and a 915 save percentage. Not too shabby at all. In season, they really didn't do a whole lot. They acquired a couple of veterans at the deadline, including Vladimir Tarasenko and Kyle Okposo. Both of those guys they acquired with conditional draft picks. So in the case of Tarasenko, it was a conditional 4th, which upgraded to a 3rd if they won the Stanley Cup. So that's happened. So the Panthers now give Ottawa a 3rd for Tarasenko. And Okposo was a conditional pick. I believe it was a 7th, but if they won the Cup, it upgraded to a 5th. So they upgraded as well. And of course, Okposo had a clause in his contract that he get a $500,000 bonus should his team win the Stanley Cup. So that's happened. He got a nice payday. And yeah, that's a great way to end the year. Big chunk of money, first Stanley Cup. After not really getting much in the past at all regarding playoffs. He's always been on teams that were, he's been in Buffalo for quite a while, who never made the playoffs at all his entire tenure there. Prior to that, he was with the Islanders. I think he's seen a little bit of playoff time there, but not a whole lot. So, Okposo, I wonder what the future holds for him. Good way to go out on top, that's for sure, if he decides to make that the case here. From a cap perspective, they have $19.5 million available, and they have 14 roster spots filled for next year with a maximum of 23. So that's, you're looking at about 7, 8 roster spots that need to be filled. You don't have to have 23. You might carry 21 or 22, but it's a lot of spots and not a lot of money when you think about it. Looking at their expiring contracts, there are a lot of them. They have a lot of players that are going into free agent here, whether restricted or unrestricted, and this team is probably going to look a fair bit different next year. On the RFA side, they have Anton Lundell and Josh Mahura. I have no doubt Lundell will get looked after. Don't know if it'll be a longer-term deal or a bridge, but he'll definitely get a contract extension for sure. Mahura, difficult to say. Wasn't a regular in the playoffs, so I'm not sure how they value him at this point, but their blue line's going to look different. They may need him to stick around. He may get a qualifying offer and get a new short-term contract. That wouldn't be surprising. On the UFA side, long list, and a good amount of these players definitely won't be back. Some will be. Sam Reinhart leads the way. Vladimir Tarasenko, Nick Cousins, Ryan Lomberg, Steven Lawrence, Kyle Okposo, Kevin Stenlund, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Brandon Montour, Dmitry Kulikov on the back end, and goalie Anthony Stolarz, who was a really good backup for Bobrovsky this year. Stolarz is probably going to get more money in free agency to be more of a tandem goalie somewhere else and get more starts. So I suspect he's gone, but can't say that for certain because they also have Spencer Knight, who's making $4.5 million for a couple more years. So I would suspect they will have to make some decisions on Knight, but odds are Stolarz isn't back. I know Reinhart wants to be back. I have no doubt the team wants him to be back as well. The big thing is with him is how much of a discount will he take. Of course, the no state tax will help. I think based on his numbers, Reinhart on the open market could probably get $11.5, $12 million. But will he ever hit those numbers again is the thing. Is he going to be a 57 or even 50-plus goal scorer regularly? That's debatable. I mean, it's a career high. I mean, he's a great player. I can see him being consistent around 40 for a while, but it's not an easy feat. So it's hard to say. You can't just look at last season. You have to look at like the whole body of work. So, but on the open market, I guarantee he'd be offered 11, 12 million for sure. Will he take less to stay in Florida? I have no doubt he probably would. How much less and how far can they go? Because if you think about it, he's at the very least a $9 to $10 million player, right? Which would put him, right up there with Barkov and Tkachuk, maybe even more, depending on the exact, number he gets. And that would take their cap space down to $10 million or less with one contract, and the rest of those, that's tricky to do. So we'll see. But Reinhart, I know Tarasenko wants to be back. I think long term, that's where he wanted to be. He's probably in line for, I don't know, I'd say a 2-year contract, maybe 3, somewhere around that 4 to 4.5 range. Can they afford that? I know there's mutual interest, but that's going to be tricky to do. I'd say Cousins and Lomberg and Lawrence, there's a good chance they're all gone. Stenlund maybe gets re-signed cheaply. I don't know. He's a pretty good fourth-line center. Ekman-Larsson and Montour probably both get more money on the open market. I mean, Montour is probably looking at like a 5 or 6 year deal at $6.5, $7 million. Like Ekman-Larsson's probably looking at maybe a 3-year deal around, $4 million, something like that. So hard to say. 3.5 to 4 is probably. So it's real tricky on who's going to be back. So we'll have to see this. We'll talk about that a little further here as well. In the 2024 NHL Draft, they don't have a lot of picks. No first or second rounders. They have 5 picks in total, but most of them are, later in the draft, 3rd to 7th round. Top questions facing the franchise is, can they sign Sam Reinhart? He's got to be their top priority. Of all the guys that are unrestricted, Reinhart had the biggest impact. So to me, that's priority number 1. I know there's like the mutual desire. I think he'll take a little less to stay. The no state tax will help. But, he might end up, I honestly think he could get at least 11 on the open market. Maybe, like I said, 11 to 12. Would he take less than that, though, to stay? That's going to be the big question. What Reinhart takes is going to leave them in a tough spot. If he takes even 9.5, 10, so he's at the same level of Tkachuk, who's making 9.5, that still knocks their space down to $10 million. So that's going to be a big question, is how much of a discount will Reinhart take to stay? And if he doesn't work that out, there's going to be a bidding war for his services, no doubt. Goaltending, like I said, Stolarz probably gets better offers to go elsewhere. I do wonder, does Spencer Knight come back to the NHL and be the backup next year, signed for a couple of years at $4.5 million? I did wonder as well if there's any chance they consider doing a buyout on Spencer Knight, where they sign him for 2 more years at $4.5 million. Obviously, his development hasn't quite gone the way they were hoping. He was in the player assistance program, which is, you can't hold that against him, but just, it does have an impact on his development. And just, where do they see him? That's still an expensive backup at this point in his career for, not having accomplished as much as they hoped at this point. And you still got Bobrovsky for 2 more seasons at $10 million. And they need every nickel here of cap space. So I do wonder what's going to happen with goaltending. We'll have to see how that goes. I'm recording this video on Wednesday. It's probably going to hit YouTube either Wednesday or Thursday. So I don't know. The buyout window opens tomorrow. So we'll get a better idea of which players are going to be in that category probably in about 24 hours time as of from the time I record this. Obviously, in the blue line, they made Forsling the priority, got him signed. And, of course, Mikkola has still signed for a couple more years. Ekblad's down to 1 more year, so are they going to extend Ekblad? Is he a cap casualty? He's been there for a decade. It was the first overall pick. At one point was their best defenseman. He's not really considered that anymore. He's still really good, but I don't know what they want to pay him what he's making, right? So I do kind of wonder. And he has trade protection, but he's not in a no move, so they have some flexibility. I do wonder about the future of Ekblad, just because of the cap, not because they don't like him or don't want to keep him. It's just with his contract and their tight situation. I wonder, because really, they've really only have Forsling and Mikkola. So you got Montour, Ekman-Larsson, both unrestricted. Ekblad for 1 more year. They might have to get some youth in there. Kulikov's also unrestricted. It could be a completely different looking blue line next year. It's really hard to say. I don't know if they can really afford to lose Ekblad, so that's why part of me says they're not going to do anything with the contract, not trying to move him. But just when you look at the roster and what they could try to move to try to create space, there's just not a ton of options. So I do wonder about Knight. I wonder about Ekblad, but it's really tough to say. Like I said, Tarasenko, I don't know if he stays. It's another veteran. I know it would be his preference to stay, but again, I don't know. Bennett is going to be due an extension. Verhaeghe's due an extension. I can't see them wanting to move either of those guys. They're so important to their success. Right now, Bennett's making 4.4. Verhaeghe's 4.1. Bennett probably wouldn't need a huge raise, but he'd probably want a bit more. But it won't be as drastic as some of them. But Verhaeghe, he put up 70 points. He's been, hitting all the big goals. $4 million is a steal for him. Verhaeghe should be up around at least 7-8, maybe even 8.5. So I don't know, for that kind of point production and 40 goals, etc. It's going to be really, really hard here. So for the short term, they got to figure out Reinhart, Tarasenko, Montour, Ekman-Larsson, those. It's quite possible that we might see 2 or 3 of those guys not return. I think it's gonna be a pecking order, and it's gonna have to come quick, because when your season extends that long, you don't really want to have distracting conversations around the contracts, but you don't have a lot of time. I know, so I won't be shocked if Reinhart gets signed, but at the end of the day, what he takes is going to have a big impact on everybody else. And Bill Zito has been the master, though, at finding cheap depth that have outperformed their contracts. A lot of these other guys have gotten there. Look, that's how he got Verhaeghe in the first place. That's how they found Anthony Duclair. Obviously he's not there anymore, but, he was a valuable signing, outperformed his contract, ended up getting moved. They picked up Forsling on waivers. They've been really, really good, using their combination of, their experience and analytics, whatever, to find valuable depth that can outperform their contract. So they're going to have to be the masters at it again. They'll have their core back. You're going to have Barkov. You're going to have Tkachuk. You're going to have, Bobrovsky. You're going to have Forsling. But we could see the core change a little bit. Verhaeghe and Bennett likely are back for another year, but it's hard to say. They're going to have so much change, and it's not easy to predict right now if they're going to be able to repeat or what their odds are. I think they're going to be a very good team, I have no doubt, but how different are they going to look? Lots of questions, and it's hard to predict what the answers are. So let me know your thoughts on how the Florida Panthers handle their short offseason with all these big questions facing them. At the end of the day, they won the Stanley Cup, so that's going to make things a lot easier. And if for any reason they can't repeat or they take a step back next year, it's a lot easier to deal with being the champs. So let me know what you think. We'll see from them this offseason in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.